Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about a very pervasive myth that needs to go away. This has been heavily debunked. It's complete nonsense. It's not based on real science. And it's this idea of somotypes. That people think that there are ectomorphs, mesomorphs, and endomorphs. Now, you'll hear people who will say, but Jason, they're real. I see people who look like this. Okay, you need to understand is that this is not due to their structure or genetics. You see people based upon their lifestyles who are either, very muscular. You do see people who are very muscular, heavily muscled, or athletic. You see people who are really skinny, and you see people who are fat. And if you before we even go into debunking it, if you want to look no further than just common sense, genetically, if a huge chunk of the American population was endomorph and mesomorph just 50 years ago, and now all of a sudden 60% of the population is an endomorph, the genetics didn't change. What changed? Lifestyle. Okay, this stuff is nonsense, and it was made up for psychology purposes. And if I recall, it was actually done studying prisoners in prison to try to determine their personality types and attitudes based upon what their body looked like. And it was that supposedly there was a psychological predisposition to personality type related to the structure of your body that was genetic. Okay, this is complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. These body types are a result of lifestyle. They're a result of lifestyle. And the funniest thing is that you need to understand that the same person, one person can actually become all three of these through the course of their lifetime, and it's been done. It's been done. You want to see people who get accused of being like combination endo-mesomorphs, or oftentimes you're very serious strength athletes who are taller. Okay? When you look at strongman, you look at the NFL. A lot of NFL players, everyone thinks are either a mesomorph or an endomesomorph. They're usually pretty tall. You look at the strongman, world's strongest man competitors, they might draw the same conclusion. Okay, they'll look at Eddie Hall, they'll look at Thor. They'll look at a bunch of these guys. Look at them. Carrying huge amounts of muscle, huge amounts of fat. Do you want to know what a lot of those guys look like when they were teenagers if they hadn't trained yet and they were active? They look like ectomorphs. They were skinny, lanky guys. You know why? Because they're tall. If you're tall, you're predisposed to being lanky. You're predisposed to being lanky. I have a friend who does strongman and powerlifting over in the UK. He's continued to grow year after year after year. He looked like the classic ectomorph when he first started working out, because the guy is like 6'2", 6'3", something like that. He was 150 pounds when he started lifting. And you can see the same thing in athletes. You start looking at people look at basketball players like, well, those guys are clearly ectomorphs. No, because they're tall and lean because they haven't put on large amounts of muscle, and they're very active. They look like really athletic ectomorphs. But do you understand that at any of those guys, because they have the sports gene basically. Anyone in the NBA at the high levels in the NBA has amazing sports genetics. They are explosive. They have high coordination again. So they've got very high kinesthetic IQs. So their kinesthetic intelligence is high. And they usually carry a predisposition towards fast twitch muscle fibers. That's what actually makes someone in a sport like that. People say, what about eye-hand coordination? That's kinesthetic IQ. Okay, that's a form of intelligence, actually. So, had any of those guys gone into football and chose to be linemen, that same structure would not be a skinny guy. They would have eaten a lot more. They would have gained a lot more muscle and fat. You would think that they had a completely different body type. That's what you would think. Okay, this is a result of lifestyle. People who are ectomorphs are usually just skinny. Well, how do we fix a hard gainer? How many hard gainers out there have successfully become big, massive lifters or bodybuilders? A lot of them have, little skinny guys. They started as what you're calling an ectomorph. That just means someone who doesn't eat that many calories relative to what they burn. Either they have no appetite and they're not active, or they're really active people who still don't eat enough. They're just skinny. Okay, this is completely lifestyle. And I'm not saying there's not a predisposition towards appetite and activity, but you could have someone who has a low activity who has that same body type as someone who has a high activity. It's a matter of relative to their food intake. They're just skinny. Okay. There are no natural endomorphs in places with a food shortage. It doesn't exist. You go to any part of the world where people are starving or there's famines and stuff and they're running out of food, they're all underweight. There's no such thing as an endomorph. It doesn't exist. Nobody looks like that. Nobody. Not one person. In other words, it's not genetic. It's lifestyle. And in this case, the lifestyle is forced upon them. You come to America now, a huge percentage of the population is looking like an endomorph. No, they're just fat. Many of those are people who would have been really lanky and skinny had they eaten less. Okay? These body types are lifestyle. Then we come over to the mesomorph. Very, very, very few people started out looking like lifters before they started lifting. There are a few, but you know what that turns out? They don't have different genes. They actually don't have different genes. You know what it turns out a lot of it is? It has to do with epigenetics. They have certain genes that get turned on by many people from years of lifting that they just had activate when they were like 10 years old for whatever environmental stress or just flipped on randomly. And what you oftentimes find is that those people who started really muscular, in the end, if they train for 10 years really hard next to someone who didn't have that, they end up being similar sizes. What? But those are outliers, and it's due to a certain gene turning on. It's not different genes. But at the end of the day, everyone who trains really, really, really hard and gets jacked and doesn't get too fat, everyone says, oh, they're just a mesomorph. Really? No, they aren't. They trained to get there. So I'm not saying body types don't exist. What I'm saying is these body types that people are seeing, they're not real as in that's what you are and you were born as and you will stay as. They're lifestyle. Your lifestyle, your long-term lifestyle will determine which of those you look like. It's not something you're born as. That's nonsense. And so we don't need these terms, right? We don't need these funny terms to differentiate between someone who's skinny. We know what a skinny person is. We know what a fat person is. And we know what a jacked, muscular mofo is. We don't need these silly terms. Because they're not real. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative. And I will talk to you guys next time.